Hi everyone, kAuction here with a short guide on the new features for the kAuction wishlist. This talks about the weight scale feature. So to begin, just open up the wishlist by typing /KA space wishlist, hit enter. And you'll see in the drop down there's a new option called weight scales now. The interface looks very similar to wishlists, just to make things easier. Basically on the left you can see all the names of the weight scales that are active, and you can add a new one by typing in the box whatever you want, and you can rename it or delete it as normal. So by default, weight scales, I'll click on one here to show you, they are a way to assign weighted values, number values, to a particular statistic so that each stat is weighted against the other. So in this case, if you look at these statistics, it shows hit rating is weighted or valued at 100. So that means for every single point of hit rating on an item, the value is calculated as 100 or multiplied by 100 basically. Now the weighting part comes in that the actual value in each of these is not relevant. You can set it as low as you want. The important thing is the ratio between them. So basically it's saying for every 1 point of hit rating, the equivalent would be a little over 2 points of haste rating, since haste rating is worth only 46 per point. Same with spell power. Spirit in this particular weight is only worth 8 per point. So you're looking at 12 to 13 points of spirit to equal 1 point of hit rating in terms of the value. So that's the important thing to understand about what the weight values actually are. This idea comes from the Wowhead filter. If you've used that, I encourage you to check it out if you haven't. But there you have a beta feature called weight scales. And basically, if you select the class and then a spec type, it uses the same sort of weight system. And all the default values, when you first load it up, you should have pretty much one weight scale automatically for each of your spec types, except arms warriors, and then some of the tanking death knight specs don't exist. But everything else should be there. And the values that are there by default all come from the Wowhead values. So feel free to change them, obviously if you know a better weighting, but that's where these initial ones come from. So if you look at some of the options here, enabled is pretty simple. If that's checked, then this will be enabled and this particular weighting will display on the search results. I'll show you in a minute. So right now balance is turned off. Score as item difference. If this is checked, then the aggregate score, meaning the actual overall value calculated by the weightings, will be shown as the difference between the score of the item you're searching for and the currently equipped item you have in that matching slot. So if you have this checked, this is a good way to see the actual upgrade value of a given item. Obviously, if it's a positive score, then based on this weighting, the new item will be better. If it's a negative, then of course it's not as good as your current item. So by default, that's checked. And then gems are pretty simple. This is basically just the list of gems that you can select to be used as the default when there's an empty socket in an item. So when this balance weight is being calculated, the score, if there's an empty red socket, it will use this gem, the Rune Cardinal Rupee, by default. And you can change these, of course. And what it will do is it will take that stat value from the gems, so obviously 23 spell power, I believe, apply it to the value in here for that stat, and then add it to the score. And so you can mess with the gems if you need to. Anyway, so I have Feral and Resto enabled by default right now, just to show you. So once you're satisfied, or you just want to see things happen, satisfied with your actual values, then open up the search, and you will see, similar to what has already been in the wishlist search, you'll see the name, the slot, which is new, mob zone, if it's in your list, and then there's 2 more columns in this case. For each active weight that you have, meaning anything that's actually checked as enabled, so feral DPS and resto right now, there'll be a new column and the calculated score will be displayed there. So if the header for those is red, you can see if you mouse over it, it says it requires a forced refresh. What that means is I updated one of the values in one of my weights, and because of how intensive it is to calculate these scores for all the items, which can be thousands at once, it doesn't do it every time you update it. So if that's red, that means you need to force a refresh by hitting refresh. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now. And at the time of this recording, it was just after a patch, so the local item cache on my actual system is pretty low. So the total number of items that are returned right now is not as high as normal. Normally this would be 3,000 or 4,000, but this will still give you the idea. So anyway, we've refreshed. These are no longer red, so these are all up to date. So the actual number you see here is the calculated score. Right now I'm wearing restoration gear, so I'll show you those scores. So this number is telling us that if you mouse over it, this item, the Barb of Tarask, is calculated to be about a 7,000 point upgrade based on our weighting scale relative to what I'm currently wearing. And remember, the reason it's relative is because in the weight scale we have score as item difference checked. If I uncheck that, I go back to search, I have to refresh, because again it won't update those automatically, and that's just to save on memory pretty much. It would be too intensive otherwise. You can see it still kind of bogs down. So now you'll see that the score for that same item has gone up to 43, or almost 43,000. So this is basically, now it's not showing me what the difference is in my current item. It doesn't care. It's just showing me the total value of that item. So either way, you can kind of get an idea. But I prefer to have the comparison enabled, but it's up to you. So anyway, let's go ahead and refresh this one more time.